Troy Miller is president and CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters. You came to the NRB with years of experience in business and management. You served in the U.S. Navy in information technology integration and as COO for Dr. James Kennedy. You come with broad experience in today's formative issues. How are you transitioning the NRB to meet today's challenges? And with that, Troy, I begin our discussion. Thank you for joining us here at the Media Line.
Well, thank you for having me today. It's an exciting world we live in. As you said, I've been around technology really from high school on, as part of Naval Engineering Group and in the, Silicon Valley industry. And I've always seen change, just a lot of change going on. And today's communications industry and media is just a constant sort of, I call it tidal wave of change. We have traditional media and broadcasting still. We have kind of a middle ground of streaming in those. And then we have just all kinds of new digital frontiers that are going on out there. And so I think the key for us is to make sure that we're always involved. We at NRB work really hard to keep our fingers on the pulse of what's going on in these different areas, because as this progresses, and this is the interesting thing, Felice, as it progresses technology-wise, it's also progressing policy-wise and regulatory-wise, and the law is trying to catch up with a lot of this that's going on. And so that's really key for us and for our members to do. So look, I'm up till 1, 2 in the morning reading about all the new things that are going on. But it's an exciting time that we live in for media communications and communications in general.
There are a lot of people familiar with the NRB and many that aren't. Can you explain what the NRB does and the importance of this organization?
Yeah, we do two major things that we do. One, we are advocates on behalf of all of Christian broadcasters across North America and really around the world. We have a big international footprint as well. And our main goal is to make sure that those broadcasters, we call it Christian communicators these days, because broadcasting is a very broad term, but Christian communicators, that they can be a part of what we call the public sector. So they can be their message, whatever they've been called to do, whatever their mission is, that mission can be in the public sector. There's no hindrance. So we work hard on watching legislation that goes through, regulatory environment, like I said, the legal landscape, and make sure that we get all the roadblocks and impediments out of the way that will prohibit them from doing their mission. The other thing that we do on that same vein is we work really hard for excellence in communication. So we have these kind of two things. So one, make sure you can do communications, you have no impediments, favorable business environments, all of those things. And then two, make sure you can do it with excellence. So you're, like we said, you keep up on the latest technology, the latest techniques, the latest processes, procedures. And of course, right now, one of the big things there is artificial intelligence. So helping everybody keep up on all of these new things that are coming their way.
And maybe when not to use it.
Yeah, right. There's a right time and definitely a wrong time for AI.
You are weeks away from the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. It must be very difficult to prioritize what are the key issues that you need to convey to the organization, to the media participants, and of course to the communities that they reach.
Well, look, we do, again, we do this throughout the year, so it's not just planning for the convention as kind of a one-time shot. We'll start. This convention is going to be in February, 23rd through the 27th in Grapevine, Texas. The minute it's over on the 27th, we'll start thinking about and working on all the issues throughout the year that we've talked about at the convention. So we look at three major areas. We look at anything that's going to inhibit the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, which you might think sounds strange, but remember COVID, they shut a lot of churches down. So we look at all of those First Amendment issues and decide, what's going on right now in the culture that are attacks on those issues. Second, we look at what's going on in the secular environment as well, because corporate international organizations today, they have come out very hostile to the freedom of speech and the right for organizations and people to say what's on their mind. And they've really kind of chosen a side in a lot of issues, social issues. And then that's where we go with that. The next thing is we look at all the social issues that are going on, the hotbed social issues that are going on, and we pick our panels out of that. We also have some close relationships with Israel and international ministries, so we always have topics around those two. And then last, again, lots and lots of things on technology with hands-on as well as just innovation explaining directions.
Grave concern these days is how media is involved with society. Does media manipulate society?
Oh, with all capital letters on manipulate, put it in all caps. Yeah, media definitely manipulates society. And look, I think it comes from two. I think one, there's a direct effort on media's part to manipulate society. I think most legacy media, mainstream news media today, are really nothing more than propaganda and really opinion pieces. They're not journalism. They're not reporting the whole facts and letting people make decisions on their own. They're really steering these conversations and these opinions. And then second is on this, media, look, for the most part, especially I'm going to talk about outside of maybe Jewish media and Christian media, secular media has an agenda. I mean, they're just lost. They're not on the same sheet that we're on our values and morals and ethics. And so that really shows, and it really shows in entertainment media. We just see that in entertainment media. They highlight things that you would watch media and think certain things in the culture today are normal, are just widespread. Must be 50% of the American population must be this way. And yet the real numbers tell us that it's those areas, especially in the LGBTQ areas, those numbers are, sub 10%. But media portrays it like it's everywhere.
Is there anything that can fix it?
We can fix it by one, being involved. We can't shrink back and just complain about the media. We need to get involved. We need to have our voices heard. We need to be bold enough and brave enough and care enough to stand up and speak in the culture. And look, I'm happy to say that lots of Christian media are filling in the gaps. And key conservative media are really filling in the gaps there of speaking up and not only bringing a counter message, because that's, look, a little manipulative on its own. It's kind of an echo chamber, but doing real journalism and giving people the options to say, here's all the information, and now you can make a decision based on your morals and your values and where you stand on these issues, not just being manipulated into it. Second, as I talked about the entertainment industry, we have seen so many new studios pop up out there that are trying to bring wholesome, family valued entertainment and great entertainment too, done at the highest quality. We've seen Christian movies over the last several years have had great box office success, great success on streaming platforms. And so again, the biggest counter we have is to have our voice be in that marketplace and be loud in that marketplace.
We also are talking about censorship. And in this area, are Christian media outlets being censored? Are licenses being revoked? Is there a problem that did exist for a very long time in this arena?
Oh, the weaponization of both government and corporate entities against media has been is yeah, has been off the charts. Especially in the new frontier media, the digital platforms out there. We had a radio television station here in the U.S. They were kicked off. Their YouTube channel was shut down for some very vague, public policy violation there, and YouTube just completely locked them out of all of their programming, off the channel. We've had a number of stories that have been, buried because of the algorithms and Google searches and those things, and we've proven all of that really happens. Look, Felice, we had in America, okay, in the last administration, where the Constitution here clearly states that the government cannot do anything to impede free speech. The government should not be doing anything there. Now there's speech that's violent and that, and the government can get involved in that. But we had a sitting head of the House Commerce Committee write to the heads of all the major conservative networks here and tell them if they were going to continue to carry certain programming, they would be investigated by Congress. If that's not intimidation to shut down programming, I don't know what is.
This kind of takes me to the next question. It's about AM radio and taking AM radios out of automobiles. Is this a technology act again, or is it a censorship act?
Well, okay, it's really, first of all, let me say clearly it's not a technology. This is not a technology act. Even the government accounting office, when they looked into this, said, in order to shield the interference, we're talking about a $35 part on, cars that cost tens of thousands of dollars to make. So that's insignificant from a technology and a cost standpoint. Two things. One, I do think AM radio was more of a political weaponization. There were a lot of groups, progressive groups that were lobbying for this, pushing for this, because the two top genres on AM radio across America are conservative talk and Christian talk and teach. And the third one is the Spanish language. And a lot of Christian talk and teach and conservative were reaching Spanish audiences. And so I think there was a real effort. They would have loved to seen AM radio shut down across America. The other thing this is all about, it's back to the censorship or control issue. This is also about who's going to control the information that's delivered to the car. So if AM radio is shut down, and then all you have now is these connected cars. All these cars are connected through the cellular network to the internet. Then they can control the subscriptions to that car. And so the subscriptions for you to get internet service, the subscriptions for what apps you get access to. And so they were looking at a big revenue stream and also control of information to the car. So those two things, I think, were the number one is the big push behind getting AM radio out of the car. The car companies see a new revenue stream. They see a chance to control the information out there, and they see a chance to shut down conservative talk and teach and talk.
You signed on to the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act. Can you elaborate on where that is at the moment?
Yeah, so we did. We were actually one of the people pushing hard to get that act written in the first place. And so it has, so every year that there's a 2-year election for Congress, a new Congress starts. So they have to reintroduce the bills from the previous Congress. They don't carry forward. So we have both the House and the Senate now have reintroduced the AM for Every Vehicle Act. It has broad bipartisan support. This is one of the few bills going through Congress today that has very broad bipartisan support. The co-sponsors of the bill in the Senate are a Republican senator and a Democrat senator, and the same thing in the House. So we really see this now advancing this year. President Trump, when he spoke at NRB a year ago, AM radio in the dash was one of the things that he promised and said that he was behind. So if Congress gets it finished and it gets to his desk, he will sign this act. And we really think we're going to get this done in this round. Again, with all the election and everything that was going on last year, it kind of took a back burner, but now it has very broad support. But there is also a number of organizations coming out in opposition.
President Trump fired a shot. It was heard around the world when he unveiled his plan for the Gaza Strip. Virtually no one saw it coming. I would say that his critics were apoplectic. Those that were supporting him were saying, why waste any time? Everything else has failed. Where is the Christian community on this issue?
Well, look, I think the Christian community, first of all, by far the Christian community, they support Israel and all that Israel has gone through with these terrorist organizations that are sitting right on their borders. And we all know that what has been has not worked. Okay, this hasn't worked. Even the Christian organizations that were working within Gaza were working with the people in there. Many of the hospitals there were built by Christian organizations and funded by Christian organizations. They realize now that underneath all of that were these terrorist groups that were subverting things. And we look at this plan and we'll keep an eye on it. as a way to save lives, not just Israeli lives, but to save Palestinian lives as well, to save the lives of people, to get them in the environments and to get in an environment that they can grow and be conducive in. If all you're going to do is go in there, rescue all the hostages, limit Hamas, and then pull out and let the same thing grow again, that's not going to work. We think if what the president is proposing really works, look, for us, I'm going to be very blunt and say this is an opportunity for Christian organizations to help and to advance the gospel to the Palestinian people.
You're not holding back there, are you, Troy? But actually, I think it's really important that people understand what's happening on the ground and how dangerous it is for the Palestinian people at the moment. You have Hamas ruling, and obviously the question stands. So for itself, it's just very difficult situation. Perhaps more telling is what seems to be a matter of language, but on reflection is much more. In February of 2024, you endorsed a resolution calling for the rejection of the term West Bank and the adoption of the term Judea and Samaria. Do you see traction when it comes to changing the terminology under the Trump administration?
Well, we do. We actually see a lot of traction for this, not only with within the Trump administration. Look, the bill has been introduced in the House now that all government documentation would no longer refer to West Bank, but would refer to Judea and Samaria, the land that's commonly used if you ever visit Israel, visit the Middle East. That's the terms that are used to describe that area. It's not these sort of made up propaganda terms out there. So we see that that's a great sign. We're going to be working on that bill as well to get that bill pushed through. We know the president is, again, he's behind this. But the big thing behind that, Felice, was not so much just about the terminology, but it was about education. It was about educating both the media, the Christian media, and we've seen the Christian media now. We did a search recently for the West Bank across over a dozen Christian media outlets and couldn't find it over the last, 7, 8, 9 months. So we see Christian media picking this up, using these terms, helping people to understand this. But we also see across churches. I spoke at a number of churches, number of places. We see churches now educating people on what the area is of the land and to understand this was land that God gave to Israel. It was given to Israel all the way back in Joshua's conquest. It was promised to Abraham before that. And Christians now understand this is the land Jesus walked in. This is Israel. This is not some place that was there forever, and now Israel has occupied it. So that education has, I think, been key because that's put the pressure on the policymakers to recognize what this land is and who it really belongs to.
What do you say to the secular person who's viewing right now and doesn't understand what you just said?
That again, that's an education issue because in some of the maybe more hostile environments that I've been in, we talk about this, and again, they've always just been fed this information to say this has always been. They don't understand even the basic things like the land of Israel, what we call Israel today, modern Israel, has never been void of Jewish people. It's never been void. There's always been a remnant of Jewish people. God has always had a remnant there. There was a remnant of Jewish people in as far back as you could go, and Jewish settlements were going on long before it became a Jewish nation in 1944. So there's been just again, it's a big education issue for them to understand. And then they step back and you talk about, where the roots of the Palestinian people really come from. Some of them, look, Felice, you could talk forever. They're indoctrinated. They're not going to listen to you. But a lot of them step back and go, I didn't know that.
Has Israel been the catalyst for the Judeo-Christian relationship, and how has that changed?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I would phrase it that way, that Israel's been the catalyst for the relation. Christians, of course, have always held a strong respect for Israel and the Jewish people. Now, we've had pockets of things throughout history where that's not been true, and we have pockets of that today that are not true. But for the most part, evangelical Christianity has always held Israel in very high regard and held Israel, Zionism, in very high regard, Israel's right to occupy, to be in the sovereign land that is theirs. So that's been there. The catalyst, I think, has changed over the years. Look, I'll be very frank about this. A lot of Christians have looked at Israel in what I call looking backwards, looking in the past, looking at the history, looking at what we just talked about, all of the Old Testament history of Israel and the New Testament history for us. Where did Jesus walk? Where did he preach? Where did he do his miracles? Where did all of these things happen? So we look at Israel kind of from a past perspective. Then they look at Israel in a future perspective. How does Israel play in look end times eschatology? How does Israel play into that? And of course, we've had all kinds of things here, Left Behind series and the Late Great Planet Earth, all these books that have been written about, the future role that Israel will play in there. But I think one of the things that recently, and I really think this was a catalyst of October 7th, was that the Christian community is starting to really look at Israel in the present, looking at Israel right now, not only the past or the future, but looking at the present of Israel. And that is really shifting the way the evangelical church thinks about Israel and thinks about the relationships and the initiatives that are going on with Israel, the Jewish people, the religious community within Israel, and really changing a lot of the pressure on government policy and public policy toward Israel.
When NRB began its conventions, you didn't see many Jews attending, many Israelis attending. That too, there too, you have seen a change. Interestingly, looking at what dynamics today, it's totally different. What caused that? What created that bond? And maybe we talked about this a minute ago about Israel. Maybe it wasn't just the fact that COVID came and what happened with Israel in terms of the strengthening of the bonds after maybe October 7th. What really did it?
Well, I think a couple of things did it. First of all, NRB has a strong history going back to the 1970s of relations with Israel. We found when we were doing our 80th anniversary last year, we found a photo of Prime Minister Menachem Begin meeting with the executive committee and key leaders from the NRB, and this was back in the mid 1970s. So there's always been a strong bond again based on that historical tourism kind of things that go on in Israel, and and a lot of organizations supporting Israel's rights. I think the thing that's really changed, like I said, now beyond October 7th, the catalyst of that is, look, we have broader communications today. So people are getting more information from true sources and not just getting the fed information that goes out. And look, we know that the I'll say it, the radical Islamic movement, they have fed all kinds of propaganda through mainstream media, and that really shaped a lot of the church's view. Now that Christians are broader communicators and they're talking about, what's going on in Israel. Hey, do you know, I know these people, this group, this that's going on. Christians are starting to see that different side of Israel than just that religious side from an evangelical religious view of Israel to even an Israel Orthodox Jewish view of Israel. And so that has really helped in starting to grow relationships between both entities.
The elephant in the room has always been you're going to proselytize the Jew. I mean, and that has been a strong consideration over the years. How do you respond to that?
Well, look, I'm not, again, I'm not going to be shy about this. As Christians, we're called to share the gospel, go there into all of the world, right? That's what we're called to do. We share the gospel with people, but we do respect people as well. I don't think there should be any and in all of my meetings over the last years of meeting with Orthodox rabbis and different people, I don't think there should be any reason we can't talk about the commonalities between our two religions, the roots between the new religions. We know that the Orthodox community doesn't look at Jesus of Nazareth as the Messiah. But look, beyond sharing the gospel, we're also called to be friends of Israel, to protect the Jewish people. We're also called, and this is whether they're Jewish or Muslim, we're called to be friends with them, and we're called to help people regardless. So I know this is seems to be a big issue, or used to be a big issue across the community there. But look, Israel has opened up, and a lot of the work goes on there are with Jewish people who've already accepted Christianity, or Christians who live in the area. So it's not something Christians are going to shy away with, but I do see Christians having a lot of respect in how they frame their conversations today versus maybe how they did that 3 or 4 decades ago.
We can't end this session, and definitely not without discussing the youth. And we've discussed this before, you and I. It's a big problem, whether it's the youth involved in religion, youth involved in understanding topical issues of the day, and youth involved in social media. Not sure where you begin there, but what are the biggest problems you see within the Christian world?
Well, look, Felice, like you said, we've talked about this. This is a problem in the Christian world and the Jewish community. One thing people don't remember, in Israel prior to October 7th, there was a lot of civil unrest around how the Supreme Court of Israel was going to be made up and who was going to decide to be there, because it's been such a progressive bastion. It's different than the U.S. court. The court is kind of perpetual. They elect their or replace their own jurist on there. So on both sides, I think we have a youth community that's been fed a lot of propaganda and a lot of manipulation by the mainstream media. But I think what we're seeing today, again, with now media opening up, and look, the Trump administration, I think, in their, let me say, their campaign, the Trump campaign, really hit this on the head by going outside of mainstream traditional media right to the big influencers for youth. And if you look at the numbers, the young generation came out very strongly. There was a huge move to the conservative side once they got the information out. So we really, again, this is back to being purposeful in our communications and getting out to those generations. Don't write them off. They're doing some of the best work on all of these new frontier platforms. I know in the US we have this whole idea of banning TikTok, but we have some ministries and some young adults who are just doing some great work supporting the Judeo-Christian values, supporting Israel, getting the truth out, what really happened on October 7th, as well as what's really going on in Israel and the Middle East today. So the key is, how do we come alongside and support them? How do we help make their voices louder? And how do we get more people involved? And that's one of the topics, again, we're going to be talking about at the NRB convention this year, and we're going to be working all year on this and into the future. How do we get the next generation look, I'm going to say it this way, deprogrammed from all the propaganda they've fed. And it's really interesting, Lise, because Felice, once they do this, they really get fired up about all the lies that have been fed to them.
President Trump has made the National Faith Advisory Board a key component of his White House agenda. I'm going to use the word agenda here because he actually is utilizing them on a regular basis, more so often than you see with many administrations. Why do you think that is?
Look, I think President Trump really is a man of faith. I think he understands that the Judeo-Christian values that this country are founded upon are just that. They're the foundation. If they erode and if they go away, then the rest of the government, doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to control. You're not going to really have a society that works as a real profitable civil country. You're going to have chaos. I mean, we saw that. Look at the country. Look at the. Sorry, let me start that over.
Start it over.
We saw that with all of the chaos that went on back with the race riots and everything else, and what's gone on in these very deeply blue states and cities across America. So he understands that. He realizes the faith community is very important to help changing the direction and the hearts and minds of America beyond public policy. And look, Felicia also realizes that the faith community came out in the strongest support for him in his policies because promises made, promises kept. And so far, I feel like we're on warp speed here in the Trump administration for the first 3 weeks.
Can't let you go before we touch on journalism and the tenets of journalism in terms of democracy. And we're seeing many influencers that don't often have facts, and especially when you're speaking about the youth. What is the NRB trying to do to shift this so that it's not influencers going out with the facts, but that it is the broadcasters that are presenting the facts and the journalists understanding the nuance and differentiation between narratives?
One of the things I think that's, again, exciting about this area, and first of all, I wholeheartedly agree with you. For the most part, especially in the mainstream legacy media, journalism has been lost. Again, we have most organizations today are at best opinion, houses where all the programs are really, these are opinions. These are not journalism. This is not facts. This is not talking with equal balance about the issues. And at worst, they're propaganda houses. So we started an initiative last year, and we're going to continue that initiative of sort of what we call a revival in journalism, of how important it is. We've been working with a lot of Christian colleges and universities, and we're going to push that even harder this year on their journalism programs, to advance their journalism programs, to help students understand what it means to actually be a journalist and not a commentator or just a host of a program, and what it means to how important the facts is. And this is taking root in the Christian community because, look, truth is a number one top tenet of the Christian faith. The truth will set you free. That's what Christ said. Know the truth, truth will set you free. And that is across all avenues of information today. So that's a huge issue for us. And again, Felice, I go back to the last one. The young people today, as you see it for them, they are realizing as they've gotten older, they are realizing how much misinformation they've been fed. They're realizing how much propaganda they've been fed and how they've been manipulated. And these folks are now becoming the real champions of truth, the real champions of hey, that's not true. I think Elon Musk's piece in X with community notes out there has just been an example. That's great. I see a number of things come up, and then boom, these community notes come up there. It's not the same censorship fact checking that went on before. These are community notes that come up and say, hey, that's not true. Check out this site, check out this fact, check out this historical record of what's going on. And look, we're going to try to foster that. That's exciting to see. But journalism has to come back alive if we're going to survive. We talk about it here in the US as being the fourth leg of government. It has to come back alive. A free press, a press that is not manipulated politically or not manipulated economically, is so important for the future of this country and the future of democracy around the world.
Troy Miller, President and CEO of the NRB, thank you so much for your time and best of luck with your convention coming up, and hope to see you soon.
Hope to see you too. And thanks for having me today.